Paul, you just returned from Vancouver, so I certainly want to talk to you about your trip. And it's also a special day for our episode, which I'll get into in a second. But I want to first talk about your trip to Vancouver. And some might say it was a little bit crazy to be traveling at this time, which personally I think you kind of are. But when did you get back?
Okay, so we left, we were gone for about 6 days. One day being a travel day, but I got back on, this past Tuesday. So yeah.
You got back Tuesday. You were there for 6 days.
Yeah.
Traveling was difficult?
No. So the reason why we took that trip is because, quite frankly, my wife and I, we needed to get away. It was a mental health break, I guess. As you know, we've been in lockdowns in Ontario for probably over a month now. And
the most recent one, yeah.
And we were originally looking at going down to the Caribbean or traveling to the US. And we decided against going there because there's still obviously a lot of COVID concerns, higher infection rates more so than in Canada. Plus, you're dealing with the stress and pressure of COVID tests. You know, we figured traveling within Canada made the most sense. We chose Vancouver. It's a beautiful city, one of our favorites. The weather is good. And, you know, if we're going to travel anywhere, I think Canada is traveling within Canada definitely provides sort of a more of a safer environment, I believe. But in terms of my experiences, you know, first of all, Vancouver, everything was wide open in terms of like restaurants and tourist attractions, that type of thing.
So masks in restaurants?
Oh, yeah. You still have to wear masks. And you still have to show proof of vaccination, which is fine. But yeah, everything is open.
Okay.
And the experience of flying, it was first time being on a plane since, in over 2 years, almost 2 years since the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it seemed to be surprisingly very easy and very seamless. I guess you hear a lot in the media about staff shortages and things are being chaotic at the airports. It was the exact opposite. Everything was very well organized. Mind you, a lot of stuff is automated now. You know, your automated your boarding passes, your luggage checks. But going
and do you have to do any testing before? Like,
no,
you have to show proof of tests or anything like that.
Well, you have to upload your proof of vaccination when you check in on your flight. So yes, they do have that information. So yes, you do have to be fully vaxxed in order to fly within, I guess anywhere in or outside of Canada. But the overall experiences of being in the airport was easy. I was pleasantly surprised. So you're encouraging people to travel right now within Canada. It's fair if they want to. It's fairly seamless. Yeah, I think so. I had a good experience. And staying within Canada, I think makes the most sense in terms of, overall safety. Where we went in BC, their numbers are much lower than what they are in Ontario. So we felt pretty confident. We weren't nervous or anything like that. Did you get any like side eye glances because you're from Ontario? Did that come up? Like, what are you bringing your germs over here? Like, was there any animosity toward people outside of the province? We did not get any, especially Torontonians. Yeah, no, we didn't get any of that at all. Everyone was very friendly, very polite. So yeah, we had a great time. It was an excellent experience. We did a lot of tourist stuff. There was a sense of normalcy, and that's what we wanted. It was very well. It was needed for sure. Okay, so one thing I noticed was that you had, and I know you have a large social media following, but you had a picture there. I think it was a birthday dinner, and you guys. I was amazed that you guys traveled all the way to Vancouver, which is 5 hours to fly out there, plus all your airport time. So a pretty good deal amount of travel to get there, and only to go to a keg for dinner. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Whenever we go on vacation, we actually try to go to non-branded restaurants. We like to try local stuff. So yeah, the Keg was the only branded restaurant that we went to. So, and that's just because it's my wife. That's what she really wanted. She was craving a steak dinner.
And it was her birthday. So
and it was her birthday. But
okay, got it.
Yeah, whenever we travel, yeah, you're right. I like to try, different restaurants, like the non-chain restaurants. And we did that. We dined out.
You're not one of these guys that gets off the plane and asks the first question the cabbie is saying, where's the closest Hard Rock Cafe?
Yeah, no. I don't do that. We used to do that a while back, but then we realized, why the hell are we doing that?
Good for you. Good. I'm glad this is not I was worried that you go away like that, go to Milan and the first thing you do is ask where their local Hard Rock Cafe is.
Yeah. No, not at all. No, I think you get the best experiences when you do try, the local restaurants, local cuisine. So yeah, we definitely, whenever my wife and I travel, we definitely try to immerse ourselves in that.
Okay, well, we should get on with this episode. We have I'm going to call this a special episode because one of our best listeners has thrown his hand up, and either you forced him to come on the show, Paul, or he wanted to be on the show. I forget, but he brings with us. He's related to you. I think we're allowed to say.
Yes,
he's your cousin.
He is my
mother's
cousin.
Side or father's side?
Mother's side.
Okay. Has an expertise in a topic that's come up a couple times on this episode, hence partly why we wanted to have him on, and that is that he knows a good deal about cannabis, which he's going to talk to us a little bit about. And so, yeah, without further delay, welcome to the show. And I forget now if I'm allowed to call him Ken or I have to go by his YouTube name. This is the first time, by the way, we've had a YouTube creator, I guess. Dr. Greenthumb, he goes by, if I got that right. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you very much, Clark. It's a pleasure to be here, and been looking forward to this for a while for sure. Love the show.
I appreciate that. I always like having people say that, and it's not something that we take lightly, right, Paul? Like, listeners of this show are very special people. That it's not something that we take lightly. We appreciate people that listen. We mostly appreciate the feedback that we get from our listeners, and we might ask for some, Ken, in this episode, but I'm not sure if we'll follow it, but we may ask a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good point that Ken being one of our very loyal listeners, because when I told you about the fact that Clark and I were doing this podcast, you very enthusiastically went back into the vault and you listened to many, well, I think from the very beginning, some of our very early episodes, and I think you've listened to them all. So our hats off and our respect to you for investing all that time in listening to us.
Yeah, I definitely binged when you told me that you guys were doing a podcast. I'm like, really? I got to hear this. And then I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, what is this going to be about? What are you guys going to talk about? What are you going to do? And I was like, okay, I could listen to this. And I have been religiously listening to it because I find it entertaining. And the subject matter that you guys speak to, it relates to me. And I think it relates to a lot of people. That's why I keep coming back anyways.
Well, thanks, but I got to say, it was. You said you were pleasantly surprised. Were those the words you used? So, what were you thinking you might be getting? Because I'm always interested to hear that.
You thought anything that Paul is involved in, the standards must be low, right?
So I couldn't see Paul having a podcast voice. To be honest with you, like I know Paul is a cousin, but to see him as someone that you would listen to recreationally. It just didn't seem feasible. But then when I heard Paul, and then I found out about the background that you guys both had, where you took some sort of like a speech course so that you could like address people in public and be more confident about it. And it definitely showed. Like I was like, wow, like this sounds like a normal podcast. This doesn't sound like something that's just sort of like pieced together and you're just trying to do it for fun. This is legitimate, and I again, that's why I keep coming back, because it's just a normal podcast with great content that I enjoy. And yeah, I listen to my cousin. Amazing.
Well,
usually
it's work for me, Ken, just so you know. It's more fun for Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just show up and look pretty, right?
You look quite pretty today in your Jays cap.
Yeah. All right.
Blue Jay hat. Paul's sporting a Blue Jay hat. Okay, well, Ken, you used the key word that a second ago, recreational. Recreational. And it makes, as soon as I hear the word recreational, I think of something, a topic you know a fair bit about, the cannabis topic. You have a YouTube channel where you talk about how to grow it, and I've seen some of the videos from seed to harvest.
Yeah.
And so we have a few questions, I think, about that. First of all, what made you decide to grow cannabis?
Well,
and is it cannabis the right word?
Yeah, I think the normal terminology is cannabis. You know, you can call it weed, pot, whatever you want, but we'll call it cannabis, since that's the legal representation of it, right? I think, well, I know I started growing because it became legal, number one, and because I was someone who recreationally used it, but didn't like the cost that went along with it. And also, I don't want to say it's a risk, but you really need to know where you're getting it from, right? Pre-legalization days, you kind of had one or two people that you trusted and you knew would give you something that, would just be fine. But, sometimes there's dry spells, and the people that normally have stuff don't have it. And then you find yourself, maybe looking for something from a source that you don't know, and then you don't know the product that you're going to get. So a couple of factors led to that, but ultimately, it was legalization and the ability to do it for free rather than spend money, and control it too. I mean, get to pick and choose what it is that you'd like to grow.
Yeah, because I want to ask you a little bit about that, but also to just remind listeners, cannabis, as far as being sold in dispensaries and in becoming legalized, was what? Was that October 2019?
Yes. Was it 2019 or 20? Yeah, I believe you're right. It was 2019.
18 or 19, because it was before the pandemic, because we talked about how this was one of the essential services where the dispensary is being open along with liquor stores, and we debated a little bit about that, Paul and I, way back. Okay, so I like, one of the things you said there was the whole knowing where it's coming from, because you're right, pre-legalized, it could be coming from anywhere. And I assume it could be coming from Mexico. It could be coming from someone's backyard or someone's house that, they're doing their own thing, and all kinds of stuff along the way. It can become either tainted, or stuff can get added to it. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but
absolutely. And it could be something that was presented as one type of bud, or one type of marijuana, and then when you get it, it's not that at all. It's significantly worse, or it's got a bunch of seeds and stems, which nobody wants. So yeah.
So quality control is something you can obviously have a big hand in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In terms of the quality control, I guess my question is, prior to the legalization, was there issues with people buying weed that was spiked with something else, with chemicals, or something that wasn't even weed at all?
So that is extremely rare. I don't want to say that pre-legalization days you'd go out and you'd get something that would send you to the hospital. Absolutely not, right? Usually what would happen is you'd either get a bad batch, or on a very, very rare occasion, and if that happened, you would immediately just cease any relationship with that connection. But sometimes people would spray it down to increase the weight of it, because it's sold by weight, right? So if you spray something down with, you spray the cannabis down and you increase the amount of grams, then that person could say to you, hey, I'm selling you X number of this, when it's actually significantly lighter. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and you also talk about things like the Bruce Banner mix, or
yes,
there are a few different names. So would it be fair to call them varietals? Or
absolutely, they're different strains. They're different
strains.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my video series I usually do in the winter. I do what is called an auto flower grow, which is a short living plant that's got a 90-day life cycle. I have a climatized shed set up in the back of my yard with electricity, so I'm able to have sort of like a grow environment maintained in there. And so I go right from seed to flower, and I choose a different type of auto flower strain each time, just to have some variety, not only for myself but for other people who watch my channel, because they may wonder, hey, what should I want to grow? What's easy to grow? What are the characteristics of how the plant grows through its life cycle? And then during the summer months, when you can actually plant outdoors here in Ontario, that's when I'll do like a full-on outdoor grow. I'll have 1 or 2 plants outside. And but again, I will choose a strain each time for variety and to find out what I like. And again, I enjoy the horticultural side of things, watching how the plant grows and develops. Kind of entertaining seeing it grow through.
I was going to ask you about that, but I see Paul is just dying to ask you a question.
No, I just wanted to jump in because the whole Dr. Greenthumb, your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
When you told me about that last year, I looked it up and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the theme of the day. Everyone's pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I was impressed with the professionalism of the YouTube videos. You do a great job of the editing, and it's to people that have a genuine interest in that, it's very informative. I guess what prompted you to want to do like a YouTube channel? And obviously you've got a pretty loyal following yourself of your channel.
Yeah, well, a friend of mine actually, he started getting involved in YouTube. He was doing those virtual F1 cockpit racing things. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but you can kind of like buy almost like a racing kit for your home with like a racing seat, a steering wheel, pedals, and then you set up your computer with this virtual F1 system. And
I think I've seen actually on Drive to Survive. I think that some of the drivers actually have these, or maybe I don't know if it's the same or if it's a $100,000 type of equipment.
It varies for sure.
Yeah, but I've seen what looks like simulator. I guess it's a simulator of some kind.
Exactly. So he was involved in that, and just by seeing that and talking to him, he's like, oh, it's so easy. You can download software on your phone, and if you're passionate about it, why not? You're spending your time doing it anyways. I was like, that totally makes sense. Why not sort of like catalog what I've done, post it, generate some viewers, and like see where this goes. I've got spare time, you know what I mean? Like what's an extra 5 minutes when I'm doing something for myself that I enjoy, to just grab a camera and narrate it at the same time. It just
so you narrate sense. And you have a partner in crime there, not pardon the pun, even though it's legal now to do this. Some videos it looks like you're kind of filming yourself, but then do you have some help with it as well?
No, it's all me. You know what? I should rephrase that. There's been, I think, 3 clips in total where I've asked my wife to hold the camera because it was too awkward to prop the camera up for what I was trying to capture. But otherwise, it's just myself either setting up the camera in a certain location, or I've got one of those sort of it's not a selfie stick, but it's like an apparatus that you can kind of wrap around your neck and then point the camera wherever you want.
Yeah, Paul uses those when he's in BC touring around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there is no selfie sticks. I hate those things.
None with a harness?
No.
Yeah.
I have this image. We've got to send us. We'll put a picture of you wearing this so that people can see what you look like, not only in general, but with one of these harnessed selfie sticks.
Yeah. No, those things are real. I had to use one once because for work, I had to do a virtual assessment, and my boss wanted to observe. So, yeah, having your phone around your neck, so like a lanyard type of thing, it's a kind of a weird experience knowing that there's someone like viewing you. Like it's
so were you live, being viewed live? And we want to get back to Ken because he's far more interesting. But but was that a live thing where your boss was watching you live?
Yeah, watching you live, having to do an assessment.
All right. Ken, do you get, I want to ask you, do you get some criticism or negative vibes from certain people when you talk about this, or do you kind of monitor who you talk to about this for the sake of like bothering people? Like, what sort of experiences have you had with this topic with friends, family, strangers?
So it's kind of interesting because I think it as a subject matter, you can kind of pick up automatically who you can approach that to. People who are in the cannabis culture, I know it sounds crazy, but it's almost like they put off a vibe. Like you can almost like look at somebody and be like, "Yep, I could see that." So
it's not just the dilated pupils.
Or... No, it's not. It's genuinely like an aura or a vibe that someone has if you're in the culture or you're not.
If they're holding a skateboard, they typically are more likely to be cool to talk to about this sort of stuff.
I would say so. There's some traits for sure that you can pick up on, but no, it's not taboo like it used to be. Like in all seriousness, like I think it's blatantly obvious how many people consume cannabis recreationally in Canada. So it's no surprise that it got legalized. And I think, if people are definitely entitled to their own opinions and they can have those legacy opinions and nothing against that whatsoever. Like, there people have had experiences that drive their, the reason why they want to stand firm on that. But I think the benefits outweigh the negatives in every aspect of cannabis. I mean, the medical benefits alone are unreal, and the fact that when you take a look at cannabis historically, like if you go back in time and you see how the government was interwoven in how cannabis became a taboo substance, it's a real eye-opener.
Yeah, and I guess one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the podcast to talk about this particular topic was because it is an interesting one to debate. And you're right in that people's views on this have definitely changed. And I'll admit my views on this have changed as well.
I wanted to ask you about that, Paul, because I got the impression, say, earlier on in the podcast that you probably weren't in approval of the legalization of marijuana. And I think we even talked about that.
Well, yeah, I guess you could put me into, group me into that to that segment of people that you touched on, Ken, about the legacy issue. Yeah, it's been an interesting progression to see over the last 2.5 years how marijuana, the effect that it has now that it's become more mainstream and people's views on it have certainly changed and mine have to a certain extent. But as you said, if you had asked me like 3 years ago, prior to the legalization, would I have been in favor of it? I may have said no. But having said that, I know that it's a natural progression that at some point cannabis was going to become legal.
Will lead to heroin addictions.
Yeah. Right, gateway.
But I guess I just figured this would make for an interesting conversation if I sort of take on the role of a devil's advocate here, because there's probably many listeners
Paul,
out there.
You remember my feelings about devil's advocates.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that we have probably many listeners out there that would maybe share that view that cannabis should not be legalized.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to have that debate, someone who is quote unquote an expert in the field, or someone that knows more than the average person.
We'll call myself a hobbyist. I appreciate that, but I'm definitely not an expert.
Okay. But fair enough. Yeah. But you know more than the average person, so...
Agreed.
That makes you an expert, as I've been told once before by somebody who I'm not sure I quite believe that. But yes, I would say, sounds like Ken knows quite a bit about what he's talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to take on the role of that, I guess, protagonist that maybe throws out a few arguments to you, and I want to see what your response is, Ken. So people that might argue that cannabis is a gateway drug. So, for example, it can lead to other more harmful substances. People who get introduced to cannabis who may not otherwise be exposed to other forms of drugs. When we're living in a time when addiction and mental health issues are at an all-time high, What are your thoughts on, do you think it's responsible that we are adding yet another substance or an addictive substance out to,
there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
Boy, Ken, I don't know where you're going to go with that answer.
Yeah.
Boy.
It's a lot of questions thrown out at once.
And when Ken asks, or when Paul asks it as the devil's advocate, which is my criticism of the whole term devil's advocate, he's outsourcing it into a make-believe third party rather than just owning the question.
There's a right-wing think tank behind this. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Ken.
First of all, I wholeheartedly agree with the risk factor, especially when you are dealing with potential psychological factors that haven't yet been detected. There is the possibility that, like, if you smoke cannabis for the first time and you may have some trait, something going on in your wiring and your chemical balances that doesn't agree with the substance, that it could have a negative effect, and it could send you down a rabbit hole, right? So absolutely. At the same token, I think that there's some responsibility. Like, if as a parent, if you're concerned about your children consuming cannabis, then you have to be active and have conversations with them and educate them. And if they do want to try cannabis, you should facilitate that with them. Like, I'm not saying like, hey, son, daughter, let's smoke a joint together, but they need to have a safe environment, and they need to know that if something goes wrong, that they have a support structure that they can rely on, right? And I mean a bad high.
Bingo. And I think when we talked about this probably a year and a half ago, I believed that the whole regulation aspects of this makes this I'm more impressed with it now, or feel a lot safer about this now that it's regulated, that there are places you can go to ensure you're getting the proper dosage, and what it says on the package is actually what it is on the package. And, as a hobbyist, you're choosing to do that yourself. And I'm assuming what you do doesn't end up in dispensaries or, into the wrong hands, and on the good side and the bad side of that. So I love that legacy opinion thing, though, because there are definitely legacy opinions for people on the other side of this, which are the people that want to use it, want to go buy it. I find the dispensaries here are still set up in a way that you feel like you're sort of doing something a little bit dirty. There's a counter and there's a door and there's little buzzers, and sometimes there's a display cabinet. Sometimes it's just at a counter that I think reminds me a little bit about what it might have been like to buy alcohol in this country 40 years, 50 years ago, which was you went into a place, they didn't have alcohol up on a rack that you could or go in and shop it. You had to hand a paper. Apparently you filled out a little form and then slid it across the counter to the guy, who looked at you in a suspicious way and then went and got the bottle of whiskey and put it on the counter. So I like that it's become something that we can talk about, but there are those sideways glances even, and I can feel potential judgment being heaped on me if I start talking about it in public about using it or buying it.
It's an instant stigma. The minute you bring the subject up and you.
But do you think it's I was going to say, like, in the 2.5 years that it's been legal, which is really a very short period of time, do you think it's become too soon, too fast, in the sense that it seems like there's dispensaries almost virtually on every street corner? Like, it's incredible how many dispensaries there are out there.
It's true.
Obviously, business must be good if there's that much of a demand.
Not necessarily. I think what's happened is they've put
into introduction.
Well, that's a whole other topic. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
There's way too many licenses were, I think, issued, and they're probably COVID delayed things. But you're right, it is turning into a dispensary almost. There's more dispensaries than donut shops right now, which says a lot about us here.
I think we're seeing an initial boom. I think what's going to happen is these dispensaries are trying to get into the market to see if they can survive with the other ones, but it's just going to be like any other market. The big dominant ones are going to stay, the ones that have huge huge grow facilities, and they're able to afford the storefronts, and then the other smaller storefronts that may struggle to, get supply, they're going to phase out. But it is interesting to see how it's exploded for sure, Paul. And with that being said, there's a couple of dispensaries that I've gone to recently. I mean, Tokyo Smoke is a perfect example in downtown Toronto on Yonge Street. Like, that's not like what you're describing at all, Clark. Like, it's a beautiful facility, and it's very professional, and you walk in there and they're playing like really hit music, and there's like lots of really cool people, and everything.
It's a product on display, it's almost like a jewelry store style, where it's all in glass cabinets.
Yeah, exactly.
I have seen that too. And I think partially I think in the licensing phases, they may have to open you can't just immediately, if you want to open up and not have like, I know one place up the street has they said, we don't have our display area ready yet. And with COVID, this was a year ago, they're not there yet. It's an iPad, and it's you select the iPad. I think one thing I found confusing as a user, so to speak, was that I didn't understand half the stuff. Like, what is a gummy? What is the Sun Fresh variety? The tangerine, the THC amounts, 5 milligrams THC, 5 milligrams cannabis or CBD, 10 milligrams of THC versus I felt like you had to almost have a diary, a notebook, so that you could say, well, today I'll try a cookie with this amount of stuff in it, or a beverage.
Yeah.
And you'd have to almost write down the effects, because it's not like drinking a beer where I can say, if I have 2 beers in 10 minutes, I'm going to be kind of buzzing, and I probably shouldn't jump in a car right now, that kind of thing.
So I can simplify that process for you and take away the math. What you do is you microdose, right? So you buy a cookie, and instead of eating the whole cookie, you have a little piece.
Yeah.
And then you're
I can't just eat a little bit of a cookie.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get you. But that's generally what most people do, right? Like, if you're getting into the edible world, it's always recommended buy something that interests you, but don't eat the whole thing. Try a little bit first and see what the reaction is, and then you can increase your intake from there.
Well, I think a lot of that comes down to the individual responsibility of the person consuming that, knowing what their limits are. But, if you want to sort of tackle the subject as to whether or not, the whole policing of, people that are impaired, I'm not sure what the stats might be on whether or not there's been any uptick in traffic accidents, or I guess
that's
overall
a good
public
question.
Safety.
Yeah, very good question. I would actually like to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll look into that. So, although Ken is an expert, he's not an expert in all aspects of this topic.
Yeah, no, it's because it's interesting to kind of look into the pros and cons of the whole cannabis issue. And, when I was doing a little bit of research for this topic, obviously the big debate is...
I thought your devil's advocate did all your research.
Yeah. Well, no, in the United States, they're having that debate right now as to whether or not, the federal government wants to legalize cannabis. And I don't think it's coming anytime soon, that's for sure. But there's a lot more opposition to that, depending on what state you're from. But yeah, there was a lot of arguments.
Because Denver's been, or Colorado, I should say, has been a pretty open state. Vancouver, Washington State.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, that is a very politically driven decision. If you're going to break down the pro versus the against marijuana conversation in the United States, you just have to take a look at a map.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much, the blue states are the ones that are legalizing, and the red states are the ones that are not. And the red states are the ones that are holding pretty firm to those arguments about, what we talked about with being gateway drug, or making it difficult for police to detect impaired drivers. We'd have to get a lot more, statistics to kind of support some of those arguments. But I'm assuming that there is certainly some merit behind that. Quite frankly, the people have to support it. In certain states, the vast majority of people do not support the legalization of marijuana.
In certain states.
In certain states,
There's one.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I was just going to say one thing, and whenever I do have this conversation with someone and I'm trying to justify the use of marijuana, even though I shouldn't have to, and really no one has to these days, but regardless, what I say is, if you're a human, you have a crutch. Everyone has a crutch, whether they want to accept it or not. Whether at the end of a long day you're going to have a cold beer, or you're going to have, a glass of whiskey, a glass of vodka, that everyone has a vice. My vice happens to be marijuana, and it was something that I discovered gave me a sense of relief and satisfaction that I was looking for, and I enjoyed it, and I still do enjoy it. I've never experienced any negative side effects from it. As far as I'm concerned, it's been nothing but a positive influence in my life. So, I got to say, it's kind of like to each their own these days. What you choose is your choice. Just be careful and try and educate yourself as to, what the possible side effects can be.
I think that's well said. And the one thing though, vice, would you consider a vice? To me, a vice is having a glass of scotch a vice, having a couple of puffs on a
yeah, vice is too strong a word. I agree. It's almost like how would you define having a drink at the end of a long day? Would that be like a reward system? Because I look at, for me, I use marijuana as a reward system. If I want to accomplish something, let's say I want to build something. You're like, okay, there's 5 steps involved. I've got to cut my pieces. I've got to sand them down. I got to glue them. I got to stain it, and I got to clear coat it, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I break it down into steps, and then once I accomplish that step to a level of satisfaction, I'm like, I've earned something, and I use that as my reward, my personal reward. So whether it's a long day of work and it's like, oh, okay, my day is done. Now it's time to unwind and relax. Or if I'm working on some sort of a project and I want to take a break, that marijuana is what I use for that.
I see a vice as something that's it controls you. It's possibly illegal, but more that it controls you and you don't have enough control over it, and that it gets in the way of your life and interferes with your family and your job. And so I only picked on the word just because I think it's okay if it's moderation and it's not ruining aspects of your life financially or whatever it's doing to you. Like some people could argue, well, that's if when my dad's had 4 beers, that's not my dad. That's a guy who's had too much to drink, and 4 beers isn't too much to drink.
Yeah, but moderation is a whole other factor in this. My reward system statement as well, right? Because a reward can turn into something a lot worse if you keep on doing it.
But well said, though. I think it's well said. Paul, before we got to move on, because we don't want to make this all about cannabis. We don't want to make it all about Ken, that's for sure.
No, it was just...
Oh, why not?
No, I was just... My final thoughts on it is that, when you're talking about the definition of vice, I think it comes down to whatever the government deems to be a vice in terms of their opportunities for taxation. In Canada, we pay some of the highest taxes for alcohol, for tobacco, and now you can throw cannabis into that. And I wonder if that is the main reason why the government was so quick to legalize marijuana, is because it was an extremely lucrative.
It was one of them. We could probably go through and debate. I mean, the police and law enforcement's efforts to fight it, like being wasted. Like there's so many different ways you can slice that.
We could talk about this for the next hour. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe if Ken passes the audition, he'll be back. So far, it's going pretty good, I think. So far, so good. I forgot what I was going to say, but I wanted to let's move on, because we may have some other opportunities to talk about cannabis in the future. But Ken, I know what it was. How do people find your YouTube channel? Can you just tell us if people want to look for it? What do they have to type into YouTube? Or
I would recommend searching for Dr. Greenthumb time lapse. And the reason I say that is because I'm not the only Dr. Greenthumb on YouTube, but I am the only Dr. Greenthumb that's been posting time lapse videos. So if you do that, you'll automatically be directed to my channel, and then you can subscribe. I'm posting regular content on a weekly basis now. I've just started a brand new video series called Grape Gorilla Autoflower, and it's going quite well. I'll be recording another video today and posting it on Friday, so if you're interested, please subscribe.
This episode is brought to you by Pace Painting. Pace Painting, serving all your painting needs, whether it's commercial or residential. Now, full disclosure, Pete is my brother-in-law, and I would recommend him to do work for anyone. He's done several jobs for us. We've always been satisfied. We've recommended him to friends and family. He's great. Email Peter at paintwithpace@gmail.com or visit his Facebook page at Pace Painting Inc. That's paintwithpace@gmail.com or visit his Facebook page, Pace Painting Inc. Time for rapid fire. As we prepare for these shows, we put a few topics together that we're going to do in a rapid format, which is 2 minutes per topic. There's 3 of us, so we're going to have to try to yield that time to give each other enough opportunities to speak, but it's a hard stop after 2 minutes. And we have a few topics we put together here. The first one is reclining seats on an airplane. This was your topic. Go. Paul, this is your topic.
Yeah, I get pissed off when people recline the seat all the way back. My recent experience on a plane is that when I was flying out last week, I was about to eat my meal and the person in front of me pulled their seat all the way back. And it's like, nope. I just pushed it back and I said, sorry, I'm eating my meal.
You pushed it back?
I did. Yeah, I did.
That's awesome.
I did.
You pushed it?
No,
Did you use your knee?
The seat and I said, excuse me, I'm about to have a meal here. Can you push your seat forward?
Was there some history already with this person, or are you just...
No, not at all. No, it's just anyone who pushes the seat back on an airplane. It irritates me because I think it's kind of selfish because seats are already really cramped in economy class. So when you push your seat forward...
You never recline your seat?
Because...
Exactly. Paul's wired like me. You don't want to inconvenience anyone else.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we're too kind or too nice of a people, but I don't recline my seat because if there's someone behind me, then it restricts their space because you have such a small space already within your little confines of your seat. Now you have this seat that comes back in front of you and your TV screen is literally like, a couple of inches from your face.
Yeah.
It bothers me. It bothers me.
There was a device that was created, we can bring it up maybe after, but there's a device you can put on the backs of a seat that prevent the person from being able to recline it. Have you seen that?
Oh, I will definitely buy that.
I don't think it's legal to use it. I think there are some rules about restricting people's seats, so be careful.
How do you get it on board the plane?
Just put it in your carry-on. It's just a clip or something, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. There's our timer.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll circle back to that clip. I'm interested to know what that is.
Yeah, maybe we'll get one of our producers to look that product up as we're talking. I'm trying to drive the timers and bus here, but that I just don't have the prowess to find that reclining seat blocker thingy. All right. Next subject is COVID hobbies. Did you find a hobby through the COVID times? COVID hobbies. Ken, you wanted, but this is your contribution. Go.
Yeah. So I actually did take up a COVID hobby separate from what our previous discussion. I used to be really into audio when I was in my late teens, early 20s, specifically kind of finding relic speakers and trying to rebuild them and make them work again. So there's been this resurgence in retro hi-fi. It's very popular to buy these old amplifiers from the late 60s or the 70s and completely restore them because people have the belief that this 70s sound is a lot better than current technology sound.
Is that because of the tubes and stuff inside the products, or? So
it's not actually tubes. That's super hi-fi for sure, and you can get into that avenue of amplification. But I'm talking classic Pioneer, with the silver face on them, and then the box is like a vinyl wood, almost like a piece of furniture, and those nice big shiny knobs on them. So I ended up going down that rabbit hole and getting myself a really nice Yamaha amplifier, and I've been slowly building my audio system piece by piece, and now I've got a relic set of 3-way speaker boxes from Britain. The brand is called Goodman, and I'm halfway through restoring those, and it's been really entertaining. I've had a lot of fun doing it.
That's cool. I would say for me, no new hobbies really came out of COVID that I can think of, because so much of my work went from work from home to so much work from home, so much blending of family and all that stuff. I couldn't really find more time to get a hobby. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, a couple of hobbies that I've sort of taken up is collecting autographed baseball cards of Toronto Blue Jay players.
And you were able to do that in COVID, like interact with live players and get things signed like that?
You buy them online over eBay, primarily.
Cool.
We can talk about that more in a further episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a blast from the past subject, because you got me into the card collecting scene back when we were both in our teens, right?
That's 2 minutes and 15 seconds. This is a 2-minute rapid fire, guys.
Sorry.
All right, next topic. Snowblowers. We live in Canada. Snowblowers, some of us own them, some neighbors own them. When is it acceptable to bring out a snowblower? Go.
I think, I would agree that there has to be a certain amount of snow on the ground. Just for a dusting, I think bringing out a snowblower is complete sort of overreaction and
pretentious.
Those things are noisy. It's an attention getter. I'm assuming that one of your neighbors has pissed you off by doing this, right, Clark?
No, a friend of mine, he sent me some pictures of his neighbor across the street snow blowing his driveway, and I think literally there was 2 inches of snow on the driveway, maybe less, like maybe an inch. And this guy's got the perfect lines, like you see for baseball fields or soccer fields with the lines going across. This guy's actually, that's how he snow blows his driveway. So I thought, you cannot. I think you got to have at least 4 inches of snow, in my opinion, before you can bring a snowblower into the equation.
Yeah, there comes a point where it's like, don't be lazy, pick up a shovel and do it yourself. It's different if you have like a physical disability that prevents you from using a shovel.
Or you're an older person, perhaps. We can give them a bit of a pass. Like, I know, Ken, you probably live in the outskirts, from what I understand. Do you have a massive driveway? Do you own a snowblower?
Well, I actually live just in suburban Niagara Falls, so it's just kind of like city life here. I live in a regular neighborhood, but pretty long driveway, and we got dumped with snow. I think we got more than you guys did the last couple of weeks. But I'm stubborn. I own a snowblower, and I haven't used it in the last 2 seasons because I want to fight the snow. I want to get out there and be like, no, I'm going to lift you all and get rid of it all. I look at it like exercise and a challenge.
Yeah.
I'm wired weird. Like sometimes I want to do things differently just because I'm a stubborn person.
So you fix hi-fi equipment and grow cannabis. That's totally in line with your personality.
Snow shoveling is good exercise. So that's the way I look at it too.
Just don't have a heart attack, because that can happen.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next topic. We have, how many have we done so far?
3.
All right, well, let's do one more. Don't feed the birds. We see these signs around. Paul, you have some feelings about feeding birds. Go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, when I was in Vancouver last week, there was a sign posted in a public area, and the sign read, and I quote, "Feeding birds is so unhealthy that the BC SPCA now consider it indirect animal cruelty," end quote. And I'll send a picture of, I think I sent you a picture anyway. We can put it in the show notes.
You read it beautifully there.
I think it's just complete overreaction. Like, give me a break. Like, okay, I realize that feeding birds bread is not advisable, but if you're feeding them seeds, it's one thing to have a sign saying, please don't feed the birds just because of an inconvenience or just because you don't want to attract birds within a certain area, especially if it's a tourist zone.
Which is what it does.
Yeah, but to say that maybe it's their way of bringing the message, but to say that it is indirect animal cruelty, like, really? I don't know, I just thought it was complete,
maybe it is.
Condescending. I don't, how can giving birds seeds animal cruelty? I don't get that.
Well, if you're giving it seed, I don't know, but in my opinion, I think it is, you shouldn't feed birds, because you shouldn't feed any wild animals, because it causes a dependence on that food coming from somewhere that if it's stopped, what happens next? A lot of these animals are overfed and they're fat. And just down the street here, Bluffers Park, there's like thousands of birds and ducks, and I can only imagine how much that's is caused by people feeding those birds. So I actually have a pretty strong opinion on this.
Well, it depends what you're feeding them. If you're feeding them hot dogs, then yeah, that is very unhealthy.
How do you know what? Yes, birds don't get seeds. It's not in nature. I mean, they get seeds from like, rotting fruits and things like that. Maybe they can find, but not by being handed seeds in the wild.
Well, the rice, right? You're not allowed to throw rice at weddings anymore, because literally the birds eat the rice, drink water, and they explode.
Yeah. That's a good way
Silence.
to the timer was supposed to go off. Bing, 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 bing. For some reason, it didn't. But no good way to end that. All right, exploding birds. Let's go one more. This I want to do this one because it's something that came up. If you have neighborhood or neighbor drop-ins or if you're in someone's neighborhood, do you feel you are compelled to visit that person? And if you found out they didn't visit you, would you be upset? Do you like random drop-ins by people? Boy, that's a lot of stuff. 2 minutes, go. Let me start with the drop-in thing. If neighbors knock on your door and say, "Hey, Paul, we're in the neighborhood. We just wanted to stop by." How do you feel about that?
I always think you should give people advance notice, because I don't really like it when people just show up unannounced at my door. It's one thing, you should always give someone a heads up to say, "Hey, I'm like 10 minutes away. Is this a good time? Can I want to meet up?"
So you don't like spontaneous drive-bys? Show up at
someone's door? Not really, no.
Ken, how do you feel about knock and Paul's on your doorstep?
I feel the same way, and funny enough, Paul has been always giving me ample notice if he's in the Niagara area. So, but I don't appreciate the unannounced drop-in, that's for sure. I mean, because then you feel obligated. Oh my God, there's like things that are lying around that I need to pick up. But the other question is, do you feel obligated to visit someone if you're in their neighborhood?
Yeah.
And I can honestly say no, I don't, because I'm in that area for a purpose. I'm not in that area. I'm not in that person's vicinity to visit them. If I am there to visit them, I'm going to let them know.
I was in my brother-in-law's neighborhood yesterday, and I went to a Starbucks, and I felt a little guilty. We drove by just by the street away from where they live, and I felt guilty. We were like, should we let them know we're in the neighborhood, at least to say, come on over? Or I felt a little bit weird about it.
I could see that. You just got to fight that.
And would they be upset? Yeah. What if I said, Paul, I was just down the street? Now, it's a little different because we don't live that far away from each other. Yeah. But if you're in St. Catharines... I wouldn't
be offended.
Ken, would you be offended if you heard Paul was in St. Catharines and didn't call you?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. Because I know he's there for a reason.
Right on the mark. I think that one could be dissected into a longer segment.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I think we got to go to... Let's do a quick what we're watching. Very quick. Like a minute to tell us what you're watching. Paul, you go first.
Okay, what we're watching. I've actually recently gotten into Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I know it's a show. I'm kind of late to the game on a lot of shows because this one just ended in terms of, I think they just wrapped up their very last season, 8 seasons in total. But
Brooklyn,
we're always looking for like a
999
family-friendly comedy. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. sort of a family-friendly comedy that I can kind of watch with my son.
Yeah.
And it's a really great show. I find it funny. Others might not. They might not appreciate the humor. But yeah, it's about Andy Samberg is the lead actor, and it's sort of the hijinks and shenanigans of a group of police officers working in Brooklyn. But yeah, it's a true comedy, and I'm enjoying it. I really think
it's a funny show. I've seen it. It is funny. Me, what I'm watching, what I'm listening to is a podcast called Smartless. It's features Justin I would say Justin, and even he has said that he gets called Justin Bateman sometimes. Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. And I saw a thumbs up from Ken. Sounds like you know the show.
Love it.
It's fantastic. They each episode, one person brings a guest who the other two don't know is coming, and it's a cross between celebrities that they bring on, some politicians, a whole bunch of different people. Will Arnett was on Will Ferrell was on an episode. My favorite, Ken Burns. Good episode with Ken Burns. Jerry Seinfeld, just listened to that one yesterday. Really, it's not a vice, but I'm in my happy place when I'm listening to the Smartless podcast. I really am. I love the show, and I highly recommend it.
How long are the episodes?
Under an hour, like 50 minutes to an hour, around there. Great show. Okay. It's on anywhere you find your podcasts. It's there. And I like their first episode with Dax Shepard. He talks a little bit about some behind the scenes stuff around podcasting when he got because he's one of the most popular podcasters out there, up there with Rogan and Tim Ferriss and stuff. So there's a little bit of behind the curtain stuff, which I can geek out on podcasts until I'm blue in the face. So yeah. How about you, Ken? What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? Anything?
So, we're just finishing up a series called Barry. That's on Crave TV. Very, very good.
Barry, Berry, or
Barry. It's 2 seasons, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the Saturday Night Live comedian. Part of the Saturday Night Live squad that's on the show, but it's great. It's basically about an army guy who kind of became a contract killer, but he's having this inner demon fight. He wants to become sort of like an actor. Very funny, very well written, but there's some pretty dramatic parts in it too. And also Yellowstone. We just finished Yellowstone. Brilliant show. And I don't know if you guys know, but there's a new series based on Yellowstone that's just been released. I believe it's called 1892, and it's the history of the Dutton Ranch and how the Yellowstone Ranch was formed.
That's cool. And that's a documentary, or that's a show?
It's
going to be a show, just like Yellowstone, yeah.
Is Yellowstone created by the same guys that did Sons of Anarchy?
I'm not sure.
There's a relation. Taylor Sheridan, who is the creator of Yellowstone, he was involved. He was actually an actor within the show for a couple of seasons, but yeah, he had some involvement with Sons of Anarchy, so that's why there is definitely some similarities there. But yeah, 1883, I think it is. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but it's definitely 1883. Yeah. But no, it's definitely on my list. I definitely want to check that out for sure. And by the way, Bill Hader is the guy you were looking for.
Thank you very much, Bill Hader.
Barry?
Yeah. And just to add to that, he plays a great serious actor.
Yeah, he's a comedian, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's one of the guests on Smartless, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he is actually. Yeah.
I haven't listened to that episode, but I know who he is. He's kind of got he's from Saturday Night Live, right?
He does classic, probably one of the best Clint Eastwood impressions ever.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see it's only 2 seasons, so it's probably a fairly easy one to get into.
It is. Yeah, it progresses quickly.
All right, guys. Well, we try to keep these episodes around an hour, and we did have a special episode today by having Ken on. So we appreciate you coming on, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fantastic. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to hearing the future episodes.
Is your wife did she know you're on this show today?
She does. Yeah, she does. She was asking me this morning. She's like, "Are you excited? Are you excited?" And I'm like, I think so. I don't know if I can what emotion I should be feeling for my first podcast, but yeah, no, it was good. It was a good experience. Thanks again for inviting me.
We don't bite, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, I think I speak for Clark when I say that you have passed the audition. So we would love to have you back for another episode. Because there's still a few more topics that we'd like to tackle, and unfortunately we don't have the amount of time to devote to that. But I would love to have you back.
Well, I can definitely tell you that when you're ready to discuss the birds aren't real topic, I'm in, because absolutely fascinating.
Well, that's a good teaser for a future episode. We are going to unpack that. So that's it, guys. Thanks for coming, Ken, and have you back for sure. I think the listeners will appreciate some of the background that we were able to get on growing cannabis and some of the rules and regulations, or just the overall attitudes about it. And thanks. Keep on listening. This is going to be a special place in history for you, Ken. You'll be able to come back and listen to this episode with you on it anytime you want, on demand, in the car. It's really impressive to show your friends, the picture of your dashboard. With the podcast on it, or on your phone, and you can do a little screen cap and send it to someone and say, I'm on this one.
That's going to be so weird, logging into Spotify and then hearing yourself.
Hey, and now you can call yourself a social media influencer between your YouTube channel and now that you can be a reoccurring guest on a podcast.
Please, I don't want to influence anyone.
You're going to have tons of fans.
Feel free to promote us in your YouTube channel also.
Absolutely. That I can do for sure.
All right, Ken, thanks for joining us. Paul, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds great.